Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Anthropuzzled podcast. I'm your host, Abby Letzinger, and every 2 weeks we'll explore how anthropologists are forging unique career paths beyond the usual academic sphere. Tune in, get inspired, and start piecing together your own career puzzle within the world of anthropology. So before we get into this week's episode, Anthropuzzled is excited to announce our partnership with the American Anthropological Association. This collaboration will help us expand the reach of our podcast to connect with even more anthropologists and enthusiasts. Now next month, November 20th through 23rd of 2024, anthropologists from around the world will gather in Tampa and online for the American Anthropological Association's annual meeting. Whether you're presenting your research or learning about the new developments in your specialty, the annual meeting is the place to grow as an anthropologist. Now we have a lot to talk about, so join the conversation and help shape the field and advance your career. Register by going to the association's website at americananthro.org. That's AMERICANANTHRO.org. Join us as we explore the field's impact and engage with a vibrant community. For more information, visit their website and get involved. On today's episode of the Anthropuzzled podcast, we have the privilege of welcoming a truly remarkable guest, Elizabeth Briody. She graduated from the University of Texas at Austin with a master's and PhD in anthropology, as well as a bachelor's in anthropology from Wheaton College, Massachusetts. In 2021, she co-founded the Anthropology Career Readiness Network, also known as ACRN, with Ryle Nolan to better equip anthropology students for their future careers. How are you doing today, Elizabeth?
Just great. Thank you.
So how did you get into creating the Anthropology Career Readiness Network? What drove you to doing that?
I was fortunately selected for the Malinowski Award, which is offered by the Society for Applied Anthropology. And as part of that award, you have to give a talk. So in the course of preparing that talk, I focused on the importance of organizations as places of research for anthropologists. Anthropologists typically have not done much ethnographic research in organizational settings. It has really, most of the research has been done by business scholars. So I was pushing the idea that anthropologists need to be part of organizations because they are such an important part of our life. If you think about all the ways in which your own life might be connected with an organization, you know, there are organizations in government, municipal, state, regional, federal, and even international. There are organizations that are nonprofits or non-governmental organizations. And then, of course, there are various kinds of businesses. Where are the anthropologists? They're not there. So that was one part of my talk. But the other part of the talk was, how else should anthropologists be benefiting aside from doing research in organizations? Well, the obvious answer is employment. Mm-hmm. This is where people find work and put bread on the table. And so I made this dual argument as part of this talk I had to give for the Malinowski Award. And at the very end of the talk, I said, we need to start thinking differently about research and about careers. And in order to get us started, one of the things I plan to do is to reach out to a number of the professional associations in anthropology and see to what extent they'd be interested in collaborating with me on an effort to make these two areas of work better known. And so that's essentially how it got started. And about 2 months after I completed the writing for that talk, we launched the Anthropology Career Readiness Network.
That's super cool. Yeah, that's just, when I was in college, that wasn't much that my professors discussed, was what happens after the fact if you're not getting into like a tenure track professor kind of deal. From the individuals I've talked to have also gotten anthropology degrees, they agree that that was, a struggle for them trying to figure out, well, where can I apply my anthropology degree? Because most companies, they don't just hire straight up anthropologists. It's usually like you're doing something like HR or international relations, where your knowledge on, people and traditions and, that open mindset is helping you make better informed or more informed decisions about what we should be doing.
Yeah, exactly.
So with the Anthropology Career Readiness Network, if someone was to go onto your site, kind of what is a summarization of how do you help students or graduates with anthropology degrees? How does this network or nonprofit help individuals?
ACRN, or the Anthropology Career Readiness Network, has a number of initiatives. And those initiatives range from something quite simple, which is providing students, graduates, and instructors with resources so that they can understand and integrate the world that practitioners like me experience into their own lives, into their work lives, into their own lives. I guess that's how I would answer that.
Okay. And I know you were telling me earlier about you guys had just released a new book, The Career Tools for Anthropology. It's currently listed on Amazon. How does that book help individuals, like anthropology students? What in it is a tool for us?
Right. Well, the book consists of 39 tools or guides. They're essentially how-to guides that help students, recent graduates, practitioners, understand what they need to do in order to become part of the workforce outside of academia, and then navigate during their career across different industries, across different organizations. So the 39 tools are distributed along a career journey. So the first set of tools is all about thinking about what kind of a career might I like to have? You know, what are my interests? What are my values? What am I thinking about? Then the second phase of this 7-stage process is about the kinds of careers that anthropologists today are working in. So some are working in medical anthropology. Some have opened up their own consulting practices. Others are working in process improvement in various organizations, and so on. Then the next step has to do with what are the skills I need in order to do what I think I want to do. And so there are a variety of tools related to those skills. And it could be something as simple as public speaking, which is a very important skill to acquire if you're going to be in front of audiences of any type. And then there are other skills as well, including methods, because what we learned from the research we did is that very few anthropology departments teach students methods. And yet methods is the reason that anthropologists get hired.
Would you be able to define what you mean by methods?
A method is a research technique that people would use in order to gather data.
Okay.
So it might be something as simple as interviewing or conducting focus groups or knowing how to excavate in a archaeological dig and so on. So we're learning that there are a few programs that actually offer methods training to students where they get a chance to practice what those skills consist of. And so when they leave their programs with their degrees, hopefully, they may know something about interviewing because they've read about it, maybe, but they've not really had a chance to extensively experience it. So they are very, very new at it. And what we hope to do through some of the skills that we've got in that section is to make it clear what are some of the most frequently used methods in organizational settings and try to teach those skills through a simple tool and a follow-up exercise.
I don't think I had any kind of methods training when I was in school. The closest we got to it was when we were discussing like anthropological theory. But even then, right, there wasn't much on that.
Right, exactly. And that's a strength of anthropology programs, that theory matters. And I have no interest in downgrading or taking away from the theoretical courses. Mm-hmm. What I am saying, though, is they need to be complemented with methods courses. And I don't just mean data collection methods. I also mean data analysis methods. It's very infrequent that you find that anthropology students know how to analyze a qualitative data set. And that to me is a tragedy, because that is among the most useful skills that an anthropologist has in the workplace.
Right. I was watching a documentary. It was on Jane Goodall, and she was like, 90% of my research is qualitative rather than quantitative. And learning how to, put that into something to where it's going to be considered useful is like super important, because that wasn't something that she was taught either.
Right. So many anthropologists figure this kind of thing out on the job, and they have to essentially learn what you would have expected they would already know based on their training. And that unfortunately is not the case. So that section on workplace skills consists of a number of techniques that are used, especially in workplace settings. And so that brings us up through 3 of the 7 stages. And then the last ones are, I think, what you might expect. Section 4 is on networking. Section 5 is on preparing your applications. Section 6 is on learning how to be interviewed by a hiring manager. And then the last section is on how you can use anthropology in the workplace, whatever the workplace is that you end up in.
That sounds like it should be in all of the career readiness departments on universities and in the anthropology departments, because all of that sounds super useful. I'm honestly probably going to get it because I still haven't figured out what I want to do with my anthropology degree. And I think a lot of that would probably be helpful, because the hardest thing for me is getting interviewed, because most of the times you kind of know what to expect, but how to react in those kind of situations, especially if you're someone with anxiety, it makes things so much harder. But if it's something that you're able to practice or, learn from, it would make things so much easier for sure.
Exactly. And there are lots of techniques you can use in order to prepare. I mean, you can work with a friend, can have your mother play the role of the hiring manager. But the important point here is that we need to practice more so that we are ready, so that we are not only informed, which is often what happens in classrooms. You're told, here is what interviewing is. Here are the different types of interviews. Here are the kinds of questions you ask. But unless you have an opportunity to practice those skills a lot, you're not going to really learn them as you need to learn them so that you can adapt them to a workplace environment.
Right. And that brings us perfectly into our next point. So through ACRN, you created a consulting program that goes into anthropology departments trying to make their programs better. Would you be able to talk a little bit about what that is and how ACRN helps?
ACRN has created an initiative called the Departmental Advisory Initiative, and its goal is to help departments improve on the ways in which they integrate the world outside of academia into their courses and into their departmental programming. And it can happen in many different ways. A very simple idea would be, have you thought about having a guest speaker? You're teaching a class on environmental anthropology. Why not bring in a practitioner, someone who works in the environmental field, full-time job, and bring that person in to talk to your class about that person's career path or what that person does on a day-to-day basis. It gives students an idea of what it's like to work as an anthropologist in some kind of an organization. So that's a very simple change that can be made. And many professors use guest speakers, but they don't always use practitioners. They might bring in other academics. Occasionally, and very importantly, they may bring in some of their alums. I'd like to see a lot more alums back in their old departments talking with students, because students can identify with them so much better than they can with someone else. They know that they have gone through their program and they have somehow made it. They're out in the working world, right? They have ideas, they have advice, and, why not be able to reach out to them and get their thoughts on what you're thinking about and, where that person might see some obstacles you might face and so on. So anyway, we're really advocating during this departmental advisory initiative, which lasts a year, by the way, of helping the faculty understand how they can make their courses much more relevant to the working world by accessing resources that they may not have accessed in the past.
Okay. And so the people who go in and talk to these departments, is it like yourself and Mr. Nolan, or is it kind of you'd bring in alum and ask them if they would be willing to talk to the school about making these changes?
Well, at the moment, it has been just Ryle Nolan and me going to these departments. However, we've taken on a third co-chair this past year, Jennifer Studebaker, and she will be experiencing her first university visit through this program next week. And so the idea is to train up a number of people from ACRN so that they will be able to help out as the demand grows, and we fully expect the demand to grow. We're working with 3 new universities this term, and we have one from last year that we're finishing up with.
And so how does one not so much become a co-chair, but like if someone reached out to you and said, hey, I really like this program that you're doing. Is there any way that I can assist or get you into my school?
What we usually have done in the past is purposely act as outsiders, which anthropologists are very good at. You know, you're an outsider in the sense that when you go to do field work, nobody typically knows who you are. I mean, there are some cases where that happens, but mostly you have to meet people and get to know them and then eventually start collecting the kind of specific data that you're looking for. And so with this departmental advisory initiative, the way we would get a person involved is to have them work with ACRN on some other projects first. And then depending on their interests and depending on, their knowledge bases, we would suggest that they come along on one of the university visits to just kind of get their feet wet. Mm-hmm. And then again, depending on what they thought about it, how well they performed from their perspective and ours, then we would maybe try again at a different university, give them more experience. So it's a gradual, sort of almost on-the-job training, if you will.
And how many schools do you guys do in a year? Because I know you said it's like a year-long program.
Yes. So you have an initial site visit, which is somewhere between 2 and 3 days, where we work intensively with the faculty and staff and usually the department chair. We meet with students. We often work with the career planning office on campus. They actually come typically to participate in our working group session. And we finish that site visit with a final presentation that includes, here are our goals for the next 12 months. We're going to do X, Y, and Z, and we're going to do them in this time frame. And so we lay out what's called a Gantt chart, which basically shows how long each of those goals is expected to take. And so, one goal that the University of Delaware had was to try to articulate what the anthropology major actually consists of and demonstrate its value not only to prospective majors, but to their parents. And so what they did was they created a roadmap. And this actually looks like a roadmap. It is a visual chart of a road, and along the road, certain things happen. So as a young student, you will be exposed to the ideas, the concepts of anthropology. And then a little bit later on, you're going to get an interest in a particular cognitive area, such as medical anthropology or perhaps archaeology, whatever it happens to be. And you're going to learn some knowledge about that. Then a little bit after that, you're going to be learning specific skills related to the general subfield. So if you are an archaeologist, you're going to spend a lot of time in the lab, and you're going to maybe learn about potsherds and storing them, managing them, documenting them, and so on. So you're going to have specific skills that you will acquire. At some point, as an undergraduate, you are going to have work experience that will be pertinent to your degree. Typically, that occurs in the form of an internship, and we are very big on internships, because that's the way in which over 60% of anthropology students find their first job. Wow. So it's critically important. But there are other ways to get work experience. Your professor could sign up for a class project with a client, and that client typically has a problem. It might be a client on campus, or it could be a client off campus. Somebody's got a problem, and you're going to help this manager or executive director or government official with whatever their issue is. And the class is going to collect the data, and then you're going to work with the class to figure out what the data is telling you, and then you're going to present what you think you learned back to the client at the end of the semester in the form of a PowerPoint presentation, along with some recommendations for how to address the problem. So that is a real live work experience for students that they can end up putting on their resume, that you actually did work for a client. Different than an internship, because an internship tends to be an individual post that you have. This is a very collaborative effort that involves the entire class. They may work in small groups doing different tasks, but they have to learn to work with each other. So it's a very different skill set you're acquiring. And that's another reason why we like it. Not only do you learn about problem solving directly from the client, but you also learn how to cooperate and work well with each other so that you can produce something for that client. Both problem solving skills and collaboration skills are highly desired by hiring managers.
Wish I had something like that when I was in college.
We're trying to get the word out that there are ways in which courses can be managed so that the students maximize what they learn. And it turns out that when you have a real client and you know you have a PowerPoint presentation due on, let's say, December 5th, you work pretty hard to make sure it is the best possible presentation it can be, because it's meaningful to you.
Yeah.
You've now established a relationship with this person, and your classmates are counting on you.
Yeah, and that rolls right into like networking as well, because if you're able to work with this client, even if it's like a class project, this is now someone you can be like, oh, like this person kind of knows who I am. They saw the work that I did. Maybe they can help me get in touch with other people to get into this position that I want.
Exactly. And when you speak with that person, or let's say after the class project is over, you might have a 15-minute or so conversation and talk about what your hopes are and what advice you might get from this person. But at the very end of that conversation, you're going to ask the most important question, which is, who else should I speak to? And by asking it that way, that person is going to say, well, I think you should speak to this other person that I know in this other organization, or and I also want you to talk to this person here. So now you've got two new names and presumably contact information. You reach out to those people. You learn a little bit about them first. What did they do? Where have they been in their career and that kind of thing? And then you reach out to them and simply ask in an email that you'd like to set up a very brief informational interview. Most people, I think the vast majority of people are going to say, of course, I'd be happy to chat with you.
No, and that's how I found like a lot of the people that I'm interviewing is, going on LinkedIn, looking up like anthropology and finding individuals who, are dealing with anthropology. And then when you find someone who's willing to interview with you, they're like, you should talk to so-and-so. So that's how I was able to find you, is Jeff Martin from American Anthropological Association was like, you should also talk to Elizabeth, and right. She would be something that would be great for your podcast, because that's pretty much what you're talking about. And I'm like, yeah, no, that's exactly what I'm trying to get to. Yeah.
So it's building out your network.
Yeah.
I think it is like a spider's web, where you're in the middle of that web and you have all these connections outward. You keep building on those outward connections.
It's not so much like, from what I'm experiencing, it's not so much what you know, but who you know that helps you get into, most positions out there that they have in the world. So what piece of advice would you give students of anthropology, either those who are still getting their degree or who have just graduated? What is your biggest piece of advice that you would give them, whether it's getting into the workforce or continuing their education into like a master's or PhD program?
Right. I think find out what your passion is. What is it that you truly love, and then pursue that. And if you can do that, things should fall into place. I'm not trying to be too Pollyanna-ish about this. But I do think that this is a case where lead from the heart. If you lead from the heart, you know that you're going to love whatever you end up finding. If you say, gosh, I have to I need to make sure that I stay local just because I'm really afraid of moving away from the community I grew up in or the community I'm living in now. Well, that's putting a constraint on you. And furthermore, it's constraining you so that you don't have even the opportunity to think about what else you might do. In academia, there really is a slimming down of opportunities for tenure track positions, for example. And that's a function of many different things, including lower enrollments or decreasing enrollments for over a decade now, or the fact that there are perceptions that social sciences and the humanities are not preparing you for careers, which is one of the things we are trying to demonstrate. Oh yeah, if you get prepared in the right way, you're going to be just fine. So you have to kind of think about it from the standpoint of what is the kind of work that you could be doing that you think you would like doing.
Okay.
And for me, the bottom line is the work intellectually interesting? Will I have an opportunity to interact with people that I can learn something from and enjoy my time with? Those are some of the key things that I look for when I'm looking at project options, in my case, since I'm a consultant, or what a person might look for if they were thinking of full-time employment with a particular organization.
Have you noticed a decrease in the number of students who are looking to get anthropology's degrees?
There has been a decline since about 2011, at least according to the data that I've seen. In some schools, like the R1s, the Research 1 universities, according to the Carnegie classification, those schools seem to be safe in the sense of enrollment, but many other universities and colleges are finding that there are fewer majors because so many more of what might have been an anthropology student is opting for careers in some other major. And part of it has to do with perception. What will I be able to do when I complete my degree?
Right.
And so in order to deal with that, the very first tool in the Career Tools for Anthropology asks that very question. What can you do with a degree in anthropology? And then it answers that question.
Okay. Do you feel that it would be beneficial to introduce like introduction to anthropology courses to like a high school level?
Yes, I think that would be great. I mean, there are some international baccalaureate high school programs that already teach anthropology, but unfortunately, in public high schools, anthropology is not typically taught. And so when students arrive on a college campus, they don't necessarily even know what it is. So that's one problem. Problem number two is that very few people out in the big world even know what anthropology is. So no exposure in high school or even earlier in their schooling.
Right.
General public doesn't know what it is. I mean, they might think of it as maybe it's archaeology or
right. Do you look at bones, or do you do what Indiana Jones does?
Right. It's that they will have some association, and those associations are not totally erroneous. It's just that they are partial.
Right.
They don't tell the full picture. So that becomes an issue. And then the third issue is, well, what are you going to do with that after you get your degree? You know, the parents in the background asking, and rightly so, I'm a parent. I understand that you want your child employed. My own parents wanted me employed, but they never questioned my judgment about anthropology. So I was lucky in that sense, you know, and I think what we have to do is we have to educate both the supply side, which is the universities, and the demand side, which is the employers, about what anthropology is and what value it brings, what relevance it brings to the work environment.
Yeah, because that was the biggest concern that my parents had when I was like, I'm going to get my degree in anthropology. They're like, what can you do with that? And I'm just like, I don't know, but I'll figure it out because these classes are cool. And so they had convinced me to continue, because I was currently getting a degree in business management, because they're like, you can do anything with business management.
Right.
So they had convinced me to keep going with that as well as get my degree in anthropology so that at least, God forbid my anthropology degree didn't work out, I still had my business one to back me up on.
Well,
now,
it's a nice complementary skill set too.
Yeah. You just have to figure out how to use it first.
Mm-hmm. Right. And that's where we need to educate people more about what it is that needs to be taught and in college coursework, and then give those students an opportunity to work out in the world in some capacity, so they get that experience. And then, it all gets tied together. I think theory is great, but theory alone is not going to cut it. You need theory and practice in order for people to make sense and to actually get into the mode where they're using things that they've learned on a regular basis. It's a little bit like language, use it or lose it.
Yep. That's a big one. Now, is there anything else that we haven't touched upon that you would like to talk about today?
Well, I'd be happy if any of your listeners would be interested in joining ACRN. It's a very easy thing to do. Just go onto our website, which I think you're going to post.
Yeah.
But it's anthrocareerready.net. And you can go to the contact page and just put in your name and email. And I will get that. It's automated, but I will get that email. And then I'll include you as part of our membership, which basically gives you an option for attending our 6 meetings a year via Zoom. So one every other month. And then on the odd month, you get a newsletter. So it's just a way to keep abreast of what is happening within the network, what new resources are available, and so on. But, especially if there are student listeners out there, one thing that you could consider is writing a blog post for us. We have a blog that's called The World of Work, and we accept blog posts from students fairly frequently. We have some rules, if you will, about them. So they have to the blog post has to pertain to careers or career preparation. So it could be your reflections on your internship experience, for example. That might be something interesting for readers. It could be on the kinds of knowledge and skills you're gaining in the classroom and how you then learn to apply them in maybe a summer job or in some volunteer work. So anyway, there are numerous possibilities of what you might write about. It's not a big task. It's 750 words. And we will work with you to help you edit it so that, it comes across as very professional.
Right. And that's something someone could possibly list on their resume of,
Absolutely.
I've written this blog for, this career readiness network in anthropology as some form of experience. Because I'm noticing a lot these days is, a lot of employers aren't caring so much what your degree is in, but what experience do you have out there in the world?
That's right.
And that's the one thing I didn't do when I was in college is I didn't really volunteer much, or I didn't do a lot of internships. It was mainly get my degree and get out. So definitely if there are internship opportunities on campus or volunteer experiences, definitely get into those because it's going to help you so much better in the long term, for sure.
Yep. Yeah, that's right. And in this process of writing a blog post for us, you will probably learn a lot about what you think you know, which is good because it's a form of reflection on what you've learned. And you will also learn a lot about the writing process. And all jobs, it seems to me, will rely on writing at some point. So being able to write something effectively and get your point across is a very good skill to have.
Agreed.
And it's interesting for the readers.
Yeah. And we've kind of touched upon this already. But I guess in summary, what changes do you wish to see in the industry that you're working in? So with universities or just anthropology in general?
I think with anthropology in general, there is one big change I would like to see. And that is, as I've previously mentioned, it's critically important to teach students theory, because theory helps you make sense of what's going on. It provides frameworks, it provides models, it provides explanations But theory alone is not going to help you if you don't know how to use and apply that theory. So in order to apply the theory, you have to have direct experience in some kind of a work environment. So introducing forms of practice into the curriculum or into departmental programming, like, a departmental workshop, for example, will be extremely valuable to students. They will learn something new, and they can then go out and try it out themselves and see how it goes. So I think, in my view, it's all about getting enough experience with the skills you are being taught, the theory you are being taught, and the methods which if you are not being taught, they should be taught, but getting that experience out in the world, whatever world means to you. It might mean your little neighborhood. It might mean an organization that you support from the point of view of the mission. It could be your local Girl Scout troop. I mean, it could be, a multinational corporation. I mean, there's endless ways and places in which you can apply your anthropology. So the point is, you need to apply it, and we need to put much more emphasis on it in the classroom.
And so, what do you love about your job? What makes you think, I just love doing this?
Well, my own professor, Ina Rosenthal-Urey, once told me that if you become an anthropologist, you can do anything. You can get into economics. You can get into kinship, religion, social interactions. Whatever you're interested in, that really can become an anthropological study of sorts, or at least an area of interest. So for me, I would say I found my passion working inside organizations, trying to figure out how those cultures work and how they could work better. Everybody is going to have a different passion, but that's mine. And if you were to ask me, what is your most favorite place in the world in which to work? I would tell you a manufacturing plant. I love being part of a manufacturing operation. Of course, most of my experience is in automotive plants.
Yeah.
But I've been in other plants as well. I've been in petrochemical plants. I've been in pet food plants. I love manufacturing, and there's something about that environment. They're noisy. There's stuff going on. There's so much that I don't understand that I want to understand. I think all of it is just an opening for me to say, how can I fit in here? I want to learn more.
That's amazing. That's not an answer that most people would get, because I don't think I've ever been to a manufacturing plant or whatever. But, I've seen videos and I'm like, there's so much going on. So it must have been something new every single day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. After a while, you start to see the patterns. The more you're there and the more people instruct you. But yeah, that is my passion.
Wow. That's amazing. And I guess just for the final question of the interview, where can listeners learn more about you and your work?
If listeners are interested in my research, they can go to my website, which is culturalkeys.us, and there are a number of pieces there. The more recent work has not been posted there, but you could do a quick Google search and a Google Scholar search, perhaps, and see what's there. It's on some of the academic websites as well. Yeah, I guess those would be the best ways.
Okay, awesome. Well, I just want to say thank you so much for coming on my podcast and talking to me about this. You've provided a lot of great insight, and that I know I'm going to be using for myself for sure. But yeah, if you ever, are interested in coming back, years to come if you've learned anything new or you've had a program a new program at a school, I'd love to have you on again.
Oh, that sounds great. Thank you so much, Abby.
All right. You have a great day.
Same to you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks for listening to another episode of Anthropuzzled. This show was produced by me. A special thanks to Cheyenne Brewer for editing the website and episode descriptions, and to Leah Akers for the incredible logo design. The The music is courtesy of Chad Crouch, aka Poddington Bear of Sound of Picture. If you have any questions, you can reach me at abby.letzinger@anthropuzzled.com. That's abby.letzinger@anthropuzzled.com. Or as Anthropuzzled on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Reddit, and TikTok. Until next time.